Hello, my name is Amelia Carter, and I'm 32 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm 9 months pregnant with my first child. If you had met me just a few months ago, you might have thought I had the perfect life, a steady home, a loving husband, a baby on the way. But perfection is funny like that. It hides the cracks you don't want anyone to see until they start splitting wide open. My husband, Michael, is 34 and works as a software engineer. On paper, he's dependable, smart, successful, and charming in that quiet, calculating way that impresses everyone at dinner parties. But at home, he's something else. Cold, distracted, absent. Sometimes, I wonder if he ever really saw me, or if I was just background noise in his carefully curated life. We used to talk, laugh, dream together. But lately, our conversations have become checklists. His expressions? Mostly sighs and side eyes. He spends most weekends at his parents' house, saying he needs a break from the noise, as if my presence, my pregnancy, is some kind of burden. I've been navigating swollen ankles, aching ribs, and constant fatigue mostly on my own, while he scrolls his phone or disappears for hours. There are moments when I catch myself daydreaming about the baby. I imagine holding her. Yes, I'm having a girl. Feeling her fingers curl around mine, hearing her soft breaths against my chest. I cling to that image like a lifeline, because the rest of my life, it feels like it's unraveling, one quiet moment at a time. The nights are the worst. He comes home late, avoids eye contact, and collapses on the couch like he's the one growing a human inside him. I try to talk, but I'm met with flat responses or that dismissive wave of his hand. Not now, Amelia. I'm tired. I've stopped expecting help. Instead, I've found small comforts, like photographing little moments around the house. The way the light hits the baby blanket. The angle of my growing belly in the mirror. These tiny, silent snapshots feel more real to me than any of Michael's hollow gestures. But something changed last week. It was a Saturday. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Michael had left that morning without a word, no message, no call. I sat on the couch for hours, wondering if I was invisible or just forgotten. And for the first time since I found out I was pregnant, I felt afraid. Not of the pain or labor, but of being alone when the time comes. I don't know what's worse, being with someone who leaves or someone who stays but makes you feel like you're not even there. I didn't know it yet, but I was just days away from discovering what real abandonment looks like. And when it came, it didn't knock. It shoved me straight into the fire. The next morning started like most others. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had the strength to face another day of silence. Michael hadn't come home until almost midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey and car exhaust. No apology. No explanation. Just a grunt and a slammed door before he collapsed in bed without a glance in my direction. I had barely slept. My back throbbed. My feet ached. But none of that seemed to matter when I heard the sharp ping of my phone. It was a text from Michael. No good morning. No check-in. Just a cold list. Pick up groceries. Get everything. List and notes. I opened the attached list. It was long. Milk, eggs, chicken, toilet paper, almond butter, laundry detergent, soda, and more, easily 2 or 3 heavy bags worth of stuff. I blinked in disbelief. I was due any day. My doctor had told me not to carry anything heavy, not to walk too far. Michael knew that. But here he was treating me like his delivery girl. I texted back hesitantly. I don't think I can carry all this. Can you help or at least come with me? His reply came seconds later. You're not sick. You're just pregnant. Those 6 words hit me harder than I expected. I stared at them, then at my belly, and felt the sick heat rise in my chest. Just pregnant? I was carrying his child. I was building an entire human being while he lounged in his parents' kitchen, probably complaining about how emotional I'd become. But I went, like I always did. I slipped on my coat, tied my hair back, and waddled my way to the corner store 2 blocks away. Every step felt heavier than the last. My stomach pulled forward, my lower back screaming for rest. The cashier looked at me with pity as I struggled to balance the bags. On the walk home, one bag tore slightly. The apples rolled out, hitting the pavement. I stood there for a moment, just watching them roll away, and, for the first time, I didn't chase after them. I let them go. I was too tired. When I finally reached the front door, arms aching and chest tight, Michael was already home, feet up, remote in hand. He didn't even look at me as I stepped in. I dropped the bags onto the floor with a soft thud. "You forgot the sparkling water," he muttered. I froze. That's what he noticed? Not the swelling in my hands, or the tears I was too proud to let fall. Later that evening, I tried to make things right, again. I thought maybe he just needed to be reminded of what we used to be. So I spent the entire afternoon preparing his favorite meal, homemade meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. I followed every step perfectly, even through the pain. My hands trembled from fatigue as I set the table. I lit candles, dimmed the lights, tried to pretend we were still a couple worth saving. He came home an hour late. Drunk. He walked in, saw the meal, and smirked. "Meatloaf," he said. "Again? What am I, in a retirement home?" He sat down, stabbed a piece with his fork, chewed once, then spat it into his napkin. "This is dry as hell," he muttered. "Can't even get dinner right." I stood there in silence, my hands gripping the back of the chair just to keep from collapsing. I wanted to scream, to throw the plate, to ask him why he still stayed if he hated me this much. But instead, I just turned away, went to the bathroom, and cried silently on the cold edge of the tub. The baby kicked once, then again like she was trying to remind me, "You're not alone, Mama." No. I wasn't. Not anymore. 3 days later, I woke up to Michael already pacing the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear. "No, Mom. We'll still leave today." "She's fine." "Yeah, just pregnant. Not dying." I sat up slowly, blinking at the sunlight filtering through the curtains. My belly felt tighter than usual, my muscles sore from a restless night. I didn't know who he was talking to at first, but I recognized the tone, cold, irritated, dismissive. His "I'm stuck with her" voice. After he hung up, he came into the bedroom and tossed a small duffel bag on the floor. "Get ready. We're going to my parents' place for the weekend," he said flatly. I stared at him. "Michael, I'm 9 months pregnant." He shrugged. "So? You're not due today. And my parents expect us. Don't start overreacting again." "I don't think we should travel," I said gently. "Dr. Kim said short trips are okay, but..." "It's a 45-minute drive," he snapped. "Get in the car, Amelia." And just like that, the conversation was over. No room for discussion. No concern. No care. I sat in the passenger seat, buckled in, holding my belly with both hands. The road stretched in front of us, like an endless tunnel. Michael didn't say a word as he drove. I watched the clouds drift by, the trees blur past, and tried to calm the growing discomfort in my lower abdomen. Something didn't feel right. 20 minutes in, it happened. A sharp cramp stabbed through my side. I gasped, clutching the door. Then I felt it. Warm liquid. I looked down, my dress was soaked. My water just broke. I cried. "Michael, turn around. We need to go to the hospital, now." He looked over at me, eyes wide with irritation, not concern. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not. Please." "I told you not to make this trip dramatic," he growled, his grip tightening on the wheel. He didn't stop. Instead, he sped up. My heart pounded as contractions began, slow but unmistakable. "Michael, please. I'm in labor. We have to go back." He slammed the brakes so hard I jolted forward. The car screeched to a halt on the shoulder of a long, empty road. "Fine," he shouted. "You want to be dramatic? Get out. Walk yourself to the hospital." Before I could process what was happening, he leaned over, flung the passenger door open, grabbed my hospital bag from the back seat, and tossed it into the dirt. "You always ruin everything," he spat. Then he drove off. He actually drove off. There I was, 9 months pregnant, water broken, alone on the side of a road, and he was gone. For a few seconds, I just stood frozen. The weight of fear, humiliation, and disbelief pressed down on my chest like 1,000 bricks. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Oh my God, Amelia?" I turned to see a woman hurrying toward me. It was Leah, an old college friend I hadn't seen in over a year. She lived just a few blocks from where we'd stopped, and by sheer coincidence, she had witnessed everything. She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and filmed the final seconds of Michael's car speeding away. Then she turned to me and held me by the shoulders. "Can you breathe? Sit down. I'm calling an ambulance right now." I could barely speak through the pain. "Leah, please call my parents too. Their number is in my phone. I can't do this alone." "I've got you," she said. "I promise." Within minutes, the wail of an ambulance echoed down the road. As the medics lifted me into the vehicle, I held Leah's hand tight. Her voice in my ear was the only thing grounding me as the world spun out of control. The ambulance ride was a blur of flashing lights, sharp cramps, and Leah's calm voice trying to soothe me. "You're going to be okay," she kept repeating. "You're not alone. Not now. Not anymore." By the time we arrived at the hospital, my contractions were coming faster. The nurses wheeled me in as I clutched my belly, trying to breathe through the pain. One of them asked for my emergency contact, and through gritted teeth I said, "My parents." "Leah has the number." Leah, true to her word, had already called them. As I was moved into a labor room, hooked up to monitors and IVs, she stayed close, brushing my hair back, keeping her hand on my shoulder. Not long after, I heard a familiar voice just outside the door. "Amelia?" "Sweetheart." It was my mother, then my father. They rushed in, breathless and red-eyed. My mom didn't ask questions. She just came to my side and gripped my hand, pressing her forehead against mine. My father stood on the other side of the bed, silent but solid, his hand gently squeezing my arm. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt safe. They didn't ask where Michael was. They didn't need to. A few hours later, in a moment that burned itself into my memory forever, I heard the softest cry echo through the room. And just like that, she was here. My daughter. They placed her tiny body against my chest, and I swear the entire world narrowed to that single moment, her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not out of pain, but release. The nurse smiled gently. "Do you have a name?" I looked down at the tiny human curled against me, her eyes blinking slowly, as if she already knew me. "Her name is Lily," I whispered. "Lily Rose Carter." My parents both teared up. Leah reached over and took a photo, a simple picture of me holding Lily, framed by hospital light and relief. She told me later she would keep it forever. In the hours that followed, while Lily slept in a tiny bassinet beside me, Leah showed me the video she had recorded. The moment Michael abandoned me on the roadside. His voice. His rage. The image of my hospital bag being flung into the dirt. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "But people need to see who he really is." I nodded. "We're going to use it. Not to hurt him. To protect her." My mother stayed with me overnight. My father paced the hallway outside. Leah came and went with meals, kindness, and calm. By the time the nurse came in the next day with the discharge papers, I felt like I had aged a decade, but also like I had just been born again. When we stepped outside into the chilly morning air, my mother wrapped Lily in a blanket she had crocheted herself. My father held the car door open, carefully helping me into the back seat. Leah gave me one last hug before we drove off. "You know where I am," she said. "Whenever you need me." "I do," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." As we pulled away from the hospital, Lily tucked close to my chest, I realized something profound. The home I thought I'd lost, I was never meant to return to. Because this was home now. A baby in my arms. My parents beside me. And a future I would build, no longer out of survival, but out of strength. Back at my parents' house, everything felt quieter, safer. The chaos of the hospital, the pain, the abandonment, all of it still echoed inside me. But here, at least I could breathe. They had turned the guest room into a nursery while I was recovering. A crib sat near the window, a small rocking chair in the corner. It wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love, and for the first time in a long time, I felt it in every corner of the room. I held Lily in my arms, rocking her gently, watching her sleep. But beneath the calm, something burned quietly inside me. Resolve. Michael hadn't called. Not once. Not to ask about me. Not to ask about his daughter. His silence told me more than his words ever had. He was never going to change. And I wasn't going to wait for him anymore. That afternoon, my mother walked in and sat beside me. She had seen it in my eyes. "You need to talk to someone," she said softly. "A lawyer. You deserve peace, Amelia." I nodded slowly. "I'm ready." With Leah's help, I was connected to a compassionate, sharp-minded divorce attorney named Melissa Hart. She was direct, professional, and most of all, she listened. I sat across from her in her office 2 days later, Lily asleep in her carrier beside me. I told Melissa everything. The emotional neglect, the abandonment, the viral video. She didn't interrupt. She just kept writing. When I finished, she looked up and said, "You're doing the right thing." And with this evidence, the video, the hospital report, your friend as a witness, we can not only file for divorce, but also ensure you receive full custody, child support, and court protection. The words full custody felt like a breath of clean air. What I didn't fully expect was what came next. Melissa paused, then said, "Amelia, what your husband did was more than cruel. It was criminal. He abandoned a woman in active labor on the roadside. That video? That's not just evidence for divorce. It's grounds for a criminal case." My heartbeat skipped. "You'll need to file a police report," she continued. "But based on what you've shown me, especially with witnesses, the district attorney may pursue this as child endangerment and abandonment." Leah was more than willing to testify. She submitted the original video to the police, and 2 days later, an officer arrived at my parents' home to take my statement. I was nervous, but also steady, because this time, I wasn't shaking with fear. I was standing with purpose. Melissa filed the divorce paperwork in family court immediately. Meanwhile, the criminal case was passed to the state prosecutor's office. Michael was served notice the next week. I heard from mutual friends that he'd lost his job shortly after the video went viral. Public shaming was bad enough, but now he was facing real consequences. He tried calling once, not to apologize but to blame. "If you hadn't made such a big deal out of everything," he barked on voicemail, "we wouldn't be here." I saved the message. So did my lawyer. At home, Lily was thriving. My parents doted on her, their energy wrapping around her like a second heartbeat. I began journaling again. Writing had always brought me peace, and now it gave me clarity. I started a personal blog, not for anyone else, just for me at first, called Letters to My Daughter. Each post was a message, a memory, a truth, a piece of strength I wanted her to carry one day when she was old enough to understand. What I didn't know was that this blog would soon become more than just therapy. It would become my future. The family courtroom smelled faintly of furniture polish and dust, but it buzzed with quiet tension. I sat beside Melissa, my divorce attorney, with Lily in my mother's arms just a few rows behind us. Michael was already there, slouched, unshaven, his eyes bloodshot and resentful. He looked like a man unraveling. He hadn't hired an attorney, just showed up bitter and defensive, blaming social media lies and one bad day. But the judge didn't need much convincing. The video was enough, the image of a pregnant woman being thrown out of a car during active labor. His voice, his words, his actions. When Melissa played the footage, the courtroom went completely silent. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but I didn't look away. I had lived through that moment. I had bled through it. Now he would, too, not with pain but with accountability. The judge reviewed the evidence, the hospital documentation, and Leah's written statement. Then came the ruling. Full custody awarded to the mother. Monthly child support mandated. Restraining order granted. No unsupervised visitation rights. Michael opened his mouth to protest, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. This court finds your behavior reprehensible and in clear violation of your duty of care to your wife and unborn child. You are lucky this is family court. Criminal court will handle the rest. And just like that, I was free. Not just from him, but from the fear he had built around me like invisible walls. 2 weeks later, I sat in a different courtroom. This time, a state prosecutor stood beside me. She presented the case with clarity and strength. Leah testified. The paramedics submitted their report. The prosecutor explained the legal definition of abandonment and child endangerment, both of which Michael had clearly committed. He tried to defend himself, claimed he panicked and didn't know what to do. But the judge wasn't moved. Michael was found guilty of misdemeanor child endangerment and third-degree abandonment. He was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, with mandatory counseling and a court-ordered no-contact clause until reviewed by a family safety officer. No early release. No excuses. When the verdict was read, I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just closed my eyes and let out a breath I'd been holding for months. That night, after putting Lily to sleep, I sat in front of my laptop. My blog, Letters to My Daughter, had slowly begun gaining traction. Shares, comments, messages from other women who had felt unseen. One post, the one where I described Lily's birth and what it meant to me, had gone viral. An editor from a parenting magazine emailed me with a freelance writing offer. Then another from a women's empowerment blog. Within a month, I had signed contracts with 3 platforms. For the first time, my words were feeding us. I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need Michael's approval. I was doing this on my own. Well, not entirely on my own. One morning, as I sat writing at the kitchen table, Lily, now a few months old, reached across her bouncer and gripped my pinky finger. Tight. Her grip was small but certain, just like mine had become. 6 months later, the seasons had turned. The air in Portland smelled like blooming trees and soft rain, and Lily had learned how to laugh. A full, gurgling sound that made everyone in the house stop what they were doing just to smile. Our days had a rhythm now. Mornings were for snuggles and coffee. Afternoons, I wrote while my mother rocked Lily on the porch, humming old lullabies. In the evenings, I read her my latest blog posts, not because she understood, but because I wanted my voice to be the one she fell asleep to. Letters to My Daughter had become more than a blog. It had become a community. Women from around the country messaged me daily, thanking me for putting into words what they couldn't, for showing them that walking away isn't weakness, but courage. That motherhood doesn't mean losing yourself. It means discovering how strong you truly are. I wasn't just writing anymore. I was healing. Michael's parents tried to contact us once, sending a letter addressed to Lily's grandparents. My lawyer intercepted it. Legally, they had no rights unless we allowed it. We didn't. There was no room in Lily's life for people who had stood by and said nothing while their son tore me down. That was one of the hardest lines I had to draw, but also one of the most necessary. Michael, from what I heard, had completed his jail sentence and moved out of state. He hadn't reached out since. If he ever did, the restraining order was still active. And I was still watching. With each passing month, I found myself opening up to the world again, but this time on my terms. I spoke at a local community center once, sharing my story with other single mothers. They called me brave. I still didn't feel like a hero. Just a woman who had finally stopped asking permission to exist. One rainy evening, I sat with Lily in my lap, her small fingers clutching my shirt as she drifted to sleep. I looked around the room. The books I'd written, the freelance contracts clipped neatly on the fridge, the printed-out emails from readers pinned to the wall. This was home. That night, I opened my laptop and started what I knew would be my final entry in the blog. Dear Lily, I started writing to you when I didn't know how to speak for myself. I was broken, scared, lost. But you, even before you were born, gave me a reason to find my voice. And now I speak not just for you, but for me. We've come a long way. I walked through fire to bring you into this world, and now I walk with strength I never thought I had. You saved me without knowing it. And I will spend the rest of my life saving you from anything that ever dares to dim your light. Love always. Mom. I hit publish. Then I closed my laptop and picked up my daughter. The storm outside had softened, and the house was still. As I carried her to the nursery, I whispered, "We're going to be just fine." And I meant every word. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more real, powerful stories to life. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more true-life journeys of strength, survival, and redemption. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of your freedom.